Hello friends, you must have heard about the nation called Israel, the tiny nation but with unconquerable achievements, the research and innovation hub of West Asia, located in the desert land in the coast of Mediterranean Sea, which became independence in 1948, a Jewish nation formed by the same Jews who faced persecutions and Holocaust in the Germany by the Nazis during World War II, and the same Jews which faced the persecutions all over the Asia and the Europe during the World War periods. They formed their nation with no resource in their hand, yet they face surrounded by the nation, yet they were surrounded by nations from all over them, and they faced the constant battles with them. You must have heard about the famous Six-Day War, where the Israel has single-handedly conquered the three nations in its neighbors, which are Israel, Jordan, Syria, and even this nation had the support of entire Arabian nations. But the Israel proved that it is the found by the people with irons. And you must have heard about the Mossad, the most advanced intelligence agency in the world. You must have heard about the Operation Wrath of Death, the same operation where the Israel took the revenge of its 1972 Munich massacre, where the 11 members of Olympic teams of Israel were attacked by terrorists of Palestinian terrorists. Israel was a nation which turned the desert into the fertile agriculture producer. And you must be amazed to know that Israel, a desert nation, exports its fruits and agriculture produce to India, a very water rich nation. So, in short, Israel is a nation which has turned the desert or the sand into Gold. And if we talk about India, then India and Israel has similar geostrategic and geopolitical concerns. They have common enemies and common crises. So it is interesting to know about the relations between India and Israel, how it developed, what was its history. So in this lecture, we will discuss about the Indo-Israel relation. So I suggest you all to take out, bring a copy and pen to note something amazing facts. So basically, the relation between India and Israel can be divided into three phases post independence, which was the first phase of non recognition, which dates from 1948 to 1950, while the second phase was of informal recognition or semi formal backdoor kind of relations, which dates from 1950 to 1992, while third phase begins from 1992 and is still going on at present date. So before looking into its post independence background, we will first look into the earlier uh, trade. So we can trace the relation between India and Israel and its diplomatic ties or people to people exchange and trade exchanges to the ancient India from about up to back up to 1000 BC, and then further the relation between India and Israel developed during Indus Valley civilization on Indian subcontinent, while on its counterpart the Babylonian civilization in Arabian regions. And also we have traced some linguistic analogy between both the regions. We have similar kind of words, kind of tunes and scripts in Israel and India, which suggests that we had a deep relationship in ancient times. So now coming back to post-independence, the first phase was from 1948 to 50. It was the time when India was in chaos. It was struggling and was itself partitioned on the line of religion. So at that time the leaders such as the Mahatma Gandhi, he was of opinion that the Jews has a right to claim on their Jewish Israel land. But at the same point he quoted that, and he denied the state of Israel based on a religious sentiments. In short, he wanted a secular kind of Israel, and he didn't want the Israel to be recognized as a Jewish nation. He wanted Jews to be Israel to be located as a a secular, inclusive nation. So in 1947, the India denied recognition of independence of Israel, and India also voted against the partition plan of Palestine of 1947. And in similar way, in 1949, India opposed and voted against the recognition of Israel in United Nations. But there were many other sects of leaders in India which are fully backing the Israel, such as the Hindu nationalist leaders such as V.D. Savarkar, M.S. Golwalkar. They were of opinion that the Israel should have the full claim over the Israel state, and also they are of opinion that Israel is the natural territory of Jewish people. So now began the second phase from 1950 to 1992. It was on 17th September 1952 that the India officially recognized the state of Israel. At that time, Nehru quoted that we would have recognized Israel very long back ago, because Israel is a fact, Israel is a truth. But we refrained because we didn't like to offend our friends in Arabian countries. Now in 1953, the Israel opened a consulate in Bombay. Though India keeps supporting the cause of Palestine, the Indian politicians were feared that by getting closer to Israel, they may lose the vote of Indian Muslims. And the second point was that India was largely dependent on Arabian countries for oil imports and for energy needs. And the third cause was that a large and significant population of Indian diaspora were living in Middle East or in the Arab states of Persian Gulf, and they were bringing a significant amount of remittance and forex exchanges for India. So these are the reasons that India remained and maintained a distance from Israel in those days. At those times, the Israel provided India with some crucial and secret information related to war, such as the Indo-Pakistan wars and various other uh, vigilant informations to India. Then began the 1992, the third phase. Now till 1992, India remained non-aligned and was pro-Arab in its policy. But in 1992, India opened its own embassy in Tel Aviv, the former capital of Israel, in January 1992. Thus, the ties flourished since then due to common strategic requirements and security threats. Now, also the formation of Organization of Islamic Corporation, abbreviated as OIC, it allegedly neglected the sentiments of Indian Muslims, and it also, at that time, the Pakistan was blockading the entrance of India as a member of OIC. So this led India to cause a diplomatic shift towards another bloc. Now, since then up to now, India maintained a healthy relationship with Israel, and it is ever widening. But on the same time, it provides a strong support and uh, support to Palestine. Uh, in Jan in 10 February 2018, Narendra Modi became the first Prime Minister of India to go into the land of Palestine on the West Bank region of Palestine. So it was a mile stepping mile, we can say, in Indo-Palestine relation. And during that visit, the Palestine offered and honored Narendra Modi with their highest civilian award, known as the Grand Collar of the State of Palestine. So this shows our bigoted policy towards two enemy nations, Israel and Palestine. In further lectures, we will be discussing about the Israel and Palestine conflicts. So now coming back to Indo-Israel relations, after the 2014 Israel-Gaza conflict, the India has severely condemned Israel and has asked to pull back its military suppression from that region. And as a gesture, India, along with other 5 BRICS nations, joined the league of 5 other BRICS nations in United Nations Human Rights Commissions to probe about the alleged human rights violation in Gaza by Israel. Further, during the United Nations Human Rights Conflict report which alleged that Israel has committed war crimes and was tabled for vote. At that time, the India abstained from voting in that case, and India was among the one of other five countries which did the same. At that time, the United Nations was the only country which voted against the United Nations Human Rights Commission report, which suggests that Israel has committed serious war crimes in Gaza. And if we look into the Israel-US relation, it had went to a peak during the tenure of Donald Trump. We will discuss those topics also in further lectures. Now again, in 6th June 2019, India worked in favor of Israel, and it denied in the favor of Israel. India denied the observer status to Palestine's NGO Shahid as a observer member or observer organization at United Nations Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC. It is abbreviated as ECOSOC. So if we look into the general relationship between India and Israel at present cases, then we can see that we had an extensive economic, military and strategic relationship with each other. India has its embassy in Tel Aviv, and while India is the largest buyer of Israeli military equipments, at the same time Israel is the third largest defense supplier to India after United States and Russia. And apart from military and strategic ties, we also share intelligence data regarding terrorist groups, and we also conduct joint military trainings. Now we have a significant bilateral trade between one another. Our key areas of trade include information technology, biotechnology, and agriculture. Israel is regarded as a role model for agriculture all over the Asian subcontinent and continents. Now, on 29th January 2021, India celebrated its 29th anniversary of Indo-Israel ties, and which began formally from 1992. At that time, a minor bomb blast was reported outside the embassy of Israel in New Delhi, for which Israel has blamed Iran. So friends, this was the brief analysis of Indo-Israel relations. Thank you.